Everyone, welcome to this week's Innovate Queensland Grid webinar for giving research and ideas direction. My name is Leanne Wyville from Presence Communications, and I work with Impact Innovation Group to deliver the Innovate Queensland program, which supports the Queensland Government's Advance Queensland initiative. Today, we're going to hear from Lex van Cooten about ways various types of businesses are using virtual reality and augmented reality to increase brand engagement and deliver services. But just while we're waiting for other people to connect to the webinar, I'm going to go through a couple of tools that we have because we've got some polls happening in today's webinar. So I'll go through those for people who haven't been involved with Citrix GoToWebinar system before. So on your screen, you should have a slide, and the slide looks like this, and then you'll have your own control panel. And if you want to make sure that that's always available, make sure you click the right button under the view, and you can collapse it or open it often with the arrow button here. We also have a couple of tools to use. So on your control panel, there should be a hand. And throughout the webinar, Lex might ask you to raise your hand. He might ask you a question. So that's the button you use when we ask you a question. So let's just have a quick show of hands. Who has found that hands button? It's looking like, yep, a good number of people have located that. That's terrific. Okay, so now I'm just going to release those hands. Okay, now if you want to ask us a question, please type it in the questions box, which is just a bit further down in your control panel. We're going to keep questions to the end. That way, Lex can get through all his presentation and let you know about the different case studies that he has prepared. So pop your questions anytime they occur to you, pop them in the questions box and we'll attend to those at the end of the session. We're also going to run a poll, so you will see further down in your control panel an option for the poll. We'll let you know when we're running the poll, but have a look now to see that you've definitely got that there in your control panel. And when I launch the polls, all you have to do is click a button and then we'll see the results come live on the screen. And that will help Lex with understanding where you're at so he can tailor his comments to you to match the majority of the people on the webinar today. Also, we have handouts. So Lex has agreed for you to have a copy of his slides, so you'll find those in the handout section. And we've also got some information there about other webinars and events that are coming up through the Innovate Queensland program. So please look to download those handouts before you leave the webinar, because once the webinar's finished, that's it. You'll have to email us and request the handout separately. So in a moment, I'm going to hand the screen over to our guest presenter, Lex van Cooten. Lex channels his passion for cutting-edge technology and its use in products which impact people's lives towards connecting people and building experiences. As a UQ business graduate and serial entrepreneur, Lex co-founded the Brisbane Virtual Reality Club, Immerse Academy and Immerse Enterprise. He currently develops and designs cutting-edge VR and AR and 360 video experiences for corporate education and health clients, and they include some big brands like Bupa, Queensland Urban Utilities, Endeavour Foundation, Hyundai, KPMG and Westfield. Lex was a project manager with the UQ Robotics Club, which connects students studying engineering with real-world application opportunities locally and internationally. His role involved leadership in developing custom 3D printed bionic arms for the Queensland amputee community. And I first met Lex at Fire Station 101, the Ipswich Innovation Hub, and I believe that's where he's conducting the webinar from today. So I'm going to hand over now to Lex and say welcome to the webinar, Lex.
Welcome. How are we? Okay, thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me okay, Leanne?
I can definitely hear you, and I hope everyone else can as well.
Brilliant. All right. Thank you so much for the introduction and for having me here today, Leanne. On behalf of our company here at Immerse, we really appreciate the opportunity to be able to share some of the interesting things that we are working on, but also the bigger picture when it comes to the virtual reality and augmented reality, and also 360 video technologies. So you should, everyone should be able to see my slides here. And what we've got going today will be a bit of a deep dive into the technology, but not going too deep, because we really do want to talk about how you can be using it in your space, in your industry. I think that's one of the most difficult things around this technology is until you actually experience it, it's something that has to be experienced before you can truly understand its capacity and what it can do. We do have a couple of polls that I hope Leanne can give us a hand with. We wanted to go over two at the very beginning, just so I can get a general idea of how many of you have tried virtual reality before. So the first question, I believe, is how have you tried, have you tried virtual reality before? And it says here, the poll is open. Everybody, yes, majority, okay. We've got some interesting numbers. So if everyone can fill that one out, then we can I can get an idea of who has tried it before. As one of the things about this technology, again, is if you haven't tried it before, it can be a little bit mind-boggling what is possible. So I think those numbers have settled down now. 87% have voted. If you haven't voted yet, it is on your right-hand side as part of the control panel. But so far, if we close it there, we've got 53% have said yes, 41% have said no, and 6% have said not sure, or maybe they didn't vote. And that's really interesting, because that means that a lot of understand the difference between virtual and augmented reality, which is something I'll touch on later on in the presentation. So if Leanne, if we could do the second poll. The second one is for those of you who have tried virtual reality. How many of you have tried an application that is relevant to your industry? So a lot of us who have tried virtual reality, especially in the general population, it is to do more with the entertainment element, and rather than something that's specific to your industry. So if you could fill out the poll, the question is, if you have tried virtual reality, was it specific to an industry application for the company or the business that you work in, or was it something that was entertainment related or something non-related to what you work on day to day? So that one's already finished. So 50% have said yes, 50% said no. So a quarter of you have tried virtual reality and have used an application that is relevant to your industry. Tried it before. So that's really, really interesting. I think something which we'll go over in these slides, if I can progress to the next one. Yep, there we go. The contents for today, I'm going to go over the industry trends and just some ideas, and just to see, you know, how it's progressed over the last 4 years. I actually got involved in virtual reality back in 2014 when the Oculus Rift, so a few of you will have heard of Oculus. The Oculus Rift headset was in its phase 2 of its developer series. And that developer hardware is something that I started developing my own content with. And this was before we even had any consumer hardware. There was obviously virtual reality hardware for in the education system, so research and academics. But then there was also virtual reality in the military space, but neither of those had really come down to a price point or a mobility, a point where the technology was mobile enough for your general consumers or the rest of us, the main population, to be able to get access to it. So that's something that has evolved since 2014 when I got involved in this space. So I just wanted to go over some industry trends to see how far that has changed. Then I'll go through virtual reality. What is it? What are some virtual reality devices that you might be interested in trying? Augmented reality will be next. So what is augmented reality? How is that different to virtual reality? And what augmented reality devices are available out there in the market today? The last one, which is virtual reality, but there's a spin to it, and it has its use cases. So there's some pros and cons to this. 360 video. What is a 360 video, and what's the hardware available? So 360 cameras. If you were looking at producing your own 360 video, what would you use? And then I'll finish on the industry use cases. So to give you an idea of what others are doing on a global level and the industries that they are applying these technologies to. But then I'll finish on some of the client work that we've done here at Immerse as well, and some of the takeaways that I myself have learned from working on these projects. Some fascinating stuff. Okay. Industry trends. So something that has been, I think, a little bit overly emphasized since 2014 when it started to ramp up in terms of popularity was the belief that virtual reality would become mainstream sooner than I think it will. I think it's still a few years off. The technology is still quite pricey for the general consumer. So you will see headsets like the PlayStation VR headset, which plugs into your PlayStation 4. That is something that has seen widespread adoption, especially in the Asian markets. But in terms of your mainstream virtual reality headsets, a lot of them are more your mobile headsets that include your mobile phone, which I'll cover later on in the presentation. I think here this diagram it does represent accurately where the big dollars are coming from. I think there is more of a push and a success rate in the enterprise on the left-hand side in blue. I think that that's been really where the investment has been flowing. A lot on the green side, which is more the consumer and the entertainment, video games, B2C, less B2B. The B2C market, I think, is still very immature. And it's I've talked to a lot of developers in this space who do make games, and they have found that because of the lack of hardware options that are available in the market, that their game hasn't been as successful as they thought. There is still a lot of investment in both the enterprise and the consumer sectors, so B2B and B2C, but I think the enterprise is more lucrative, and it's commercially, it makes more sense at this moment in time. This was a infographic that I pulled off the internet, and I think it accurately represents the polls that we've completed today. I am finding wherever I go and when I'm presenting that a lot of people, at least 50% of the audience in the business or B2B or the corporate space, a lot of the sales team have actually experienced VR before. So a lot of this is in the marketing space. And you can check out this infographic in detail later with the slides. But down the bottom in particular for virtual reality, it says the top 3 areas of interest for using VR are in simulation exercises, employee testing and training, and computer modeling. So I will speak more on those as we go through the presentation. And then with augmented reality, so on the right-hand side down the bottom, it says top 3 areas of interest for augmented reality are, again, simulation exercises, employee training and testing, but also its use in products. So as an overall theme, I've found it's interesting that in the corporate space, a lot of you, at least 50%, have tried VR already or augmented reality. So the education has already started to seep into those areas. So virtual reality, I'll explain for those of you who aren't sure what the difference is. With virtual reality, you're popping on a physical headset and you are being completely cut off from the real world around you. It can sound a little bit scary, but it's actually wonderful on the other end if you're experiencing something that you're wanting to. There's so many different applications for this, but if you can imagine someone who might be sick in a hospital bed or somebody who is going through training before they embark into a dangerous work site or work environment, you can actually simulate different experiences by cutting them off from the physical room that they might be sitting in and immersing them into a virtual training simulation. Virtual reality tends to encompass the 3D virtual environments. So when we are developing a virtual world at Immerse, we will use multiple modeling programs. We will 3D model the environment. Usually it's based on a real world location, but that could be an imaginary world completely. So we can make that up. And we tend to go through with the client what they're looking to achieve and then designing it accordingly. And included in that is animation, visual effects, a whole bunch of things. So the virtual reality headsets or hardware that's available today, I do start on the Google Cardboard, but I don't recommend it. A few of you may have tried the Google Cardboard, but I have never liked this piece of hardware, only because it's more of the cheap and nasty experience. A lot of companies will look at using Google Cardboard specifically because it allows for them to custom brand, and it literally is a piece of cardboard that folds out with two lenses in there for the eyes to be able to adjust to the screen. And then in the front, you'll see on the slides here, if you can see my mouse, it uses or utilizes a mobile phone. So the benefit to some of these bigger brands that we've worked with, they see that if they don't need to invest heavily in the actual physical phone, they can reduce their cost and invest it just in the Google Cardboard. The downside is everybody who uses the Google Cardboard tends to get a different experience depending on what phone they have. And it doesn't generally give a suitable, comfortable experience because of the lenses that are used with the Google Cardboard. You will get a lot of people experiencing eye strain. So just there's the pros and cons that I've noted down there. But again, this is very cheap and nasty, and I wouldn't recommend the Google Cardboard for any of your campaigns. What I would recommend though is the Samsung Gear VR. So I would assume that most of you who have tried it will have tried the Samsung Gear VR. This is again a mobile device. The limiting factor is that it utilizes the Samsung mobile phones. But what it does allow is a more comfortable experience. So you will notice the headset has, head straps. There's a touch-sensitive touch button on the side here, which allows you to interact with the virtual experience. But because of its integration with the Samsung ecosystem and the lenses that it utilizes are bigger and more suitable to virtual reality viewing, it gives you a much more immersive experience. So Samsung Gear VR will definitely be something that I would recommend if you're wanting to create something that's a bit more mobile and something where you can take your virtual reality experience wherever you go, whether that's a convention or a marketing activation. And just looking into the near future, specifically in the mobile headset space, you will notice that Oculus Go is coming out in the next couple of months, hopefully sooner rather than later. I am really excited about the Oculus Go because it allows the user to have an all-in-one integrated mobile virtual reality headset, whereby you won't need to invest in a $1,000 phone. That's one of the challenges with the Samsung headsets is, a lot of our users, a lot of the population are actually, loyal to Apple or other different brands of mobile phone. And so with the Samsung mobile headsets, you do have to buy into their ecosystem. But with these standalone headsets that you're seeing, the Mi VR standalone or the Oculus Go, they are all in one integrated, and they have removed a lot of the mobile phone components that you don't require to run a VR experience. So the cost or the price point for the Oculus Go is rumored to be around 500 Australian dollars, so about 400 USD. So that is reasonable. That's quite reasonable for a headset with the quality that they're suggesting they will be able to output. In the top right-hand corner here is the HTC Vive Focus. So that is another quite anticipated standalone headset. The difference between what this one will be able to do and what a lot of the other mobile VR headsets allow is you will notice on the front of the Vive Focus, there are actually two cameras. And these cameras will be outwards facing and will be able to take in data or information on the physical world that you're standing in, and will be able to then position it so that you can get up and walk around within a limited physical space. The limitation to the other mobile virtual reality headsets you'll find is that you will be able to sit down with the mobile headset on and look around in virtual reality. You will be able to interact with a touchpad on the side, but you can't physically get up and move. If you do get up out of your chair and walk across the room, the virtual world will actually follow you. So it'll be as if you're physically moving, but virtually you won't be moving. So that's one of the limits that the Vive Focus is looking to tackle. Hopefully everyone is following along. The Oculus Rift is the next level up. So this is something that, I was working on the developer version of this before it was released. Now we have the consumer grade Oculus Rift headset that's available. It includes sensors such as these, which you will position on your table, and then you have your own specific controllers called the Half Moon controllers, and you've got the Oculus Rift headset. So this is really quite a it's a step down from full room scale virtual reality, but it's a step up from the seated mobile passive virtual reality experience that a lot of people have tried. So the Oculus Rift allows you to actually get up from your seat and be able to interact and walk around inside your virtual world. And those controllers are quite unique as well. They sit very comfortably in your hands, and the Oculus Rift headset, I've noticed they have the integrated audio, which is actually a huge benefit when you're trying to demonstrate virtual reality to people who've never tried it before. Then my favorite, and I also worked on the HTC Vive when it was in its developer kit stage back in 2014-15. This is probably my favorite because of its tracking device here. So this is called the Vive Tracking Puck, and I'll get to that in a second. But with your two lighthouses, so these lighthouse tracking devices are set up one in the opposite corners of your physical room. Then you will place your virtual reality headset on, and you will use these custom Vive controllers, and you'll actually be able to walk around within a 5 by 5 meter space. So this is by far the largest amount of room that a consumer grade virtual reality system can afford you. And there's also have been announcements that by the end of this year, they will include the ability to increase your tracking area to 10 by 10 meters. So we're fast approaching the point where we can have warehouse scale virtual reality. So if you imagine popping on your VR headset and being able to roam within a warehouse and overlaying or experiencing, a full 3D virtual environment within a warehouse that you couldn't easily represent, in real life, that starts to, get quite exciting, especially with your training simulations. One of the downsides to this particular headset, and also the Oculus Rift, the previous one, even though it does afford your room scale experience, is the fact that it has a cable. So it is tethered, and the cable will run from the headset to your computer. The computers are also high-powered computers, so they can be quite costly, maybe $2,000 to $3,000 each. And you just need that power at the moment to be able to run something that is room scale in terms of virtual reality experiences. The cable on the headset is going to disappear. So by the end of this year, there are promises, or there have been announcements that there will be wireless streaming of that virtual reality experience by attaching another device on the back of the head to be able to stream directly to the high-powered computers. The tracking puck. So I almost forgot. This tracking puck here, we have a number of these, which basically allows you to stick the puck to any physical object in the real world. And then in your software, in the digital 3D world, we recreate that exact same object so that, in essence, we can have a physical chair, such as the one I'm sitting on today. I can track that and then have a digital representation of that chair inside of my virtual world. So I can not only see through the virtual reality headset the chair, but I can actually walk over and sit down in that chair. And I can feel that when I reach out and touch it while I've still got my VR virtual reality headset on. So that's something that's very exciting. If you think about if you were to play a sport such as baseball, You can actually attach this puck to the bottom of your baseball bat and see and feel your baseball bat. But then when you pop on your headset, you might be standing in a famous stadium and playing against your favorite athletes in a digital replica of the real world thing. So that tracking puck, I think, is exciting. It just blurs so many lines between the physical world and the virtual space. One of the interesting headsets, and we've done some projects with Fove before. This was actually started by a gentleman, this company started by a gentleman who was based in Brisbane, and he moved to Japan just for the funding opportunities that were available over there, and also to develop this physical product. So this is a eye tracking virtuality headset, which allows you to place your headset on. It's really useful for people who have disabilities. So we worked on an experience where somebody could actually play the virtual piano virtually for an audience. So they were disabled and weren't able to use their limbs. Instead, they pop on the virtuality headset, and by looking at keys on a virtual keyboard, they then integrate that into the physical piano, and the piano keys on the physical piano were played so that the audience could listen in on the song. So that was an interesting project, but also very fascinating to see how eye tracking is being integrated into virtuality and what that can do for things like training, for tracking where people's attention is, but even for selling products in retail. So you can really capture not only where the viewer is looking or facing, but also where their eye direction is facing as well, what they're focusing on. Augmented reality. So the poll was specifically for the virtual reality side of things, but with augmented reality, a few of you may have tried something like Pokemon Go, and a few of you may have experienced it and not liked it so much, or what it did to the surrounding community or people that you would have seen walking the streets. I think it's fascinating to see how technology actually can cause people to act in a different way, and certain people who have, and I've heard stories about people who were quite isolated and were a bit too fearful to venture out of their home. Pokemon Go actually encouraged them to get out there and make some new friends. So there's pros and cons to technology, and I think augmented reality being something that could impact us in the short-term future, more so than the virtual reality. I think it's exciting to see some of the major brands that are getting involved in this space. Augmented reality, just to explain the difference between this and virtual reality, augmented reality will use a device such as your mobile phone, or an iPad, or a dedicated augmented reality headset to actually overlay a digital object on the real world around you. So you can still see, for example, your office space, but imagine that your boss could join you in the meeting room via augmented reality, and you'd be able to communicate with him or her. Or also, if you were to, for example, give up your multiple screens and monitors that would have cost you, $500 to $1,000 each, you could have multiple screens surrounding you while you're working with a flick of a button or a snap of your fingers even. So the augmented reality, I think, will allow us to digitally overlay a lot more information on the world around us. It'll be able to guide us to locations that we want to go to, but it'll also allow us to learn more about the environment that we're passing through. For example, the history and the heritage, or it might point us in the right direction for food that we may be interested in eating, or people we may be interested in meeting. So specifically in the headsets space, the hardware, augmented reality hardware, you'll notice that the Microsoft has done a major push into this space with the Microsoft HoloLens. A few of you may have tried the headset. I think one of the, I consider it a developer kit, even though it is $4,000 Australian dollars for one. The reason being is that it still has a fair way to go before it's A, affordable, and B, more user-friendly. So you'll notice that when you pop on this headset, you do get an incredible experience. However, that experience is limited to 40 degrees field of view. So there is a 40 degrees worth of window that is rendering the augmented reality environment. So as you move or shift your focus or your head across your real world, you'll notice that it will actually clip and only show part of, for example, your boss sitting across the table from you. If you have them on a slight angle, you'll only see part of them in view. So the degrees available for augmentation is still quite limited in the Microsoft HoloLens. Still a very impressive device, and I think that if Microsoft can pull off a full, 180 degrees of augmentation and then make the headset much lighter, about half its current weight, I think you'll see quite a powerful experience coming from that. So this is an example again of what you could do. This is Minecraft in your living room. Keep in mind that this is a marketing image and it doesn't accurately portray the fact that the items over here, you won't see them in your peripheral because the headset specifically renders only 40 degrees field of view in front of you. But this is again an example of your game or your digital world bleeding into your real physical world, thanks to augmented reality. A competitor to the Microsoft HoloLens is the Meta. They have now released the Meta 2, and this is another augmented reality device. The benefit being that it is a 90 degrees field of view rather than your 40 degrees. One of the downsides though is the pixel density is not as detailed as what you will get with your Microsoft HoloLens. So it seems a little bit pixelated when you view it through the Meta 2. Still another great device though. Google Glass. A few of you may have heard of Google Glass, and I do include it in the augmented reality section, although it isn't technically augmented reality, they say. It is a heads-up display. So rather than adding a digital overlay on the real world around you, it'll actually display information that you may have pre-selected or that you might find interesting and important as pop-up notifications in your view. So this is being used in a lot of warehouses at the moment for staff that are trying to stay organized, or things like even the pharmacy. I've got a friend of mine who works in B2B and is helping a pharmacy integrate Google Glasses into their scanning procedures. And last but not least, Pokemon Go on your mobile phone. I think that thanks to the mobile phone is actually quite powerful, and its evolution over the last 10 years has been so profound and so fast that it's actually thanks to the mobile phone, and I forgot to mention this, but it's mobile phone technology that allowed us to rapidly iterate and progress with virtual reality headsets. The first Oculus Rift headset developer kit was actually based on the mobile phone screen, and it was a 3D printed headset with a mobile phone in there. And you'll notice that even your mobile VR experiences are again heavily utilizing the graphics processing that the mobile phone can do, and also the screens that are now at a high enough resolution to give you a compelling virtual experience. On top of that, everybody has a mobile phone these days. They're getting smarter and smarter, and augmented reality is something now that we can deploy across everyone through their mobile phones, which means that there really isn't that much of a cost prohibitive if you want to experience augmented reality yourself. Virtual reality, you do have to find that headset that will work with your phone, or purchase a fully complete kit, which will comprise of your expensive computer, which renders the virtual experience, but then also the room scale hardware. So 360 video, I will touch on this quite quickly because it is very much linked to virtual reality. So 360 video, you can use a cheap $500 camera like the Gear 360, which was produced by Samsung. And it's actually not quite as good, this is a little bit old, but the Nokia Ozo is more expensive, gives you a bit more detail and resolution, but there's also a whole range of other 360 video cameras out there, pricing anywhere from $500 all the way up to $25,000. So there's quite a spectrum there in terms of what you can produce a 360 video with. And a lot of you will have seen 360 videos on, for example, Facebook or YouTube. So if you've ever navigated to YouTube, even if you wanted to do now, you can actually search in YouTube hashtag 360, and there will be a dedicated YouTube channel for 360 videos that YouTube has compiled. They range in resolution and quality, but you'll see there's quite a lot of use cases for 360 video in tourism, and really just transporting people into an environment where you're using live action characters to act out some sort of scenario. So the benefit to 360 video is that you do tend to get some reduced costs, in that we don't have to 3D generate everything. You can actually get live action characters. You can find an office. You can act out, a discrimination experience, and then use that straight away as a 360 video to immerse some of your staff in it or employees to give them an experience of what it is like to be discriminated against. So it's quite powerful in creating empathy, for example. But 360 video is quite powerful in a whole bunch of different industries as well. So capturing anything that is based on the real world, 360 video is quite powerful for that. So moving on to industry use cases. So these are some examples that I've pulled from different industries. I'm sure there's a number, and I've tried to keep it relevant to the industries that you may be invested in. Training is a big one. So HCTL is a company based in Hong Kong, and without having to read all of that information, they specifically are using Virtuality to recreate some of the dangerous environments that they experience for their staff, or their staff have to go through. A lot of this is to do with loading and unloading heavy cargo. So as a cargo handler, they have recreated some of their real world locations, and then they immerse their staff in those locations to practice out what they would do day to day on the job, but also highlighting safety risks along the way. So this is great, a great use for the room scale virtual reality, which you'll see the gentleman there is actually using the HTC Vive and is using these controllers to interact in the virtual world. HCTL can also then, because it is a 3D environment, they can actually collect and output all of the data from each user. They can actually track how long the user took to complete the activity, what they may have been focusing on a lot of the time, and any mistakes or issues that might have come along the way. They can actually collect that data from the user. NASA has been using virtual reality for a long period of time now. So it's now, thanks again to the mobile phone revolution, we are getting technology that is cheaper and more affordable, but also having a higher resolution. These headsets in view here are actually custom NASA virtual reality systems, but they're using virtual reality to help train their astronauts on how to maintain and navigate space stations before they are actually deployed up into space. Walmart, they use 360 video. Just last year, they recorded the Black Friday sales mad rush over in their Walmart stores. And in this video, in the 360 video, they're actually using that footage to help staff gain an understanding or experience what it's like during rush hour on the Friday Black Friday sales, to help them become exposed to what it's like there during the madness, and hopefully get them ready for what this year's Black Friday may entail. So I thought that was an interesting use. This here is actually a game, and Job Simulator is a game that was actually bought out by Google. I believe the company bought Google bought the development company that created this. This is not used with serious training, but I'd like to use this game as a little bit of entertainment, but also showcasing to people what you can do in terms of different activities. So Job Simulator is based on the future where we won't need to work, apparently, and these robots will actually do all the real work for us. Job Simulator is actually a simulation of what it used to be like back in today's day, of what it was like for us to actually work at a real job. So there's a bunch of different scenarios there. This one is a kitchen experience, so you're actually serving behind the counter in a kitchen, but allows you to interact with things like your microwave, your stove, sauce, and everything. Like, you can really get into quite detailed training simulations, and I like to use Job Simulator as an example. A little bit of fun, but also an example of what's possible. Collaborative multi-user experiences. I think that's it. Our internet infrastructure does struggle with this, and I'll be honest with you about that. Overseas, we do see this being adopted more for the multi-user experience, but I think once Australia catches up, I think that we'll see a global push for the multi-user experiences. Effectively, that means that anybody who has, whether it's a mobile virtual reality headset or a room scale virtual reality headset, they will be able to place their headset on and sit next to somebody as if they were sitting a meter away, when that person, whether it's a colleague or a friend, will actually be positioned on the other side of the world. So it's quite powerful. I think it'll have massive applications for major multi-level companies. The idea that I can be working from home and place on my virtuality headset and then collaborate in a room at my own home with people who may be positioned globally really challenges the idea that you need to be located somewhere specifically other than having a good internet connection. It does challenge the fact that you need to be located in certain cities or in certain countries to be able to work a specific job. So Facebook Spaces. Facebook, actually a interesting point. Facebook bought out Oculus in 2015 for $2 billion. So Facebook has been pushing for virtual reality in a major way, and they really do see it as the future of social interaction. Facebook Spaces is an application that Facebook developed for you to join up with your friends. They do have cartoon renders of or representations of you and your friends, but there are certain little activities that you can do together already in this multi-user experience. And then Microsoft. So it's really interesting. Microsoft is really pushing to be involved heavily in the 3D virtual space. They do have their own virtual reality headsets, which I didn't mention earlier, but if you search for Microsoft Mixed Reality online, you'll find that they've got not only the Augmented Reality Hololens, they have their own virtual reality headsets by partnering with physical hardware manufacturers like Acer and HP, but they've also got this, they recently bought out AltSpace. So AltSpace is a multi-user social platform, and Microsoft really sees this as the future of working. So hence why they wanted to purchase a multiplayer virtual world experience. Educational applications. I did mention NASA already, but this is actually an experience that you can download from the internet. Mission ISS. It's a very beautiful experience, but it's actually based on the 1-to-1 scale version of the space station, International Space Station. So if you've ever thought about visiting this International Space Station but haven't got a rocket of your own, you can invest in some virtual reality headsets like the Oculus Rift and go for a tour on Mission ISS, or the International Space Station. There's heritage applications as well. The blue isn't specifically on a shipwreck or based on a real life shipwreck, but if you do get a chance to experience this beautiful underwater world, you'll get to see that you can quite quickly and quite easily capture some of our historical moments. And I imagined the Titanic, for example. Imagine going back in time through your virtual reality headset and actually being able to visit the Titanic before it sank, to see it in all of its glory in a 1-to-1 scale, and actually interact with the captain or the staff on board and actually learn more and have an educational experience based on history, and recreating those historical landmarks or those historical events inside of virtual reality, I think is quite powerful. And Google Earth actually has a VR or virtual reality version now, whereby you can place on a VR headset and transport yourself to major cities across the globe. I think it's really fascinating because it allows you to visit locations and practice your geography from your own living room, but also plan out trips, for example. I think it's quite useful in your high schools for education around geography and taking your students to different locations around the world. Medical is a big one. So this experience is actually a mobile virtual reality experience, hence the graphics aren't super high resolution, but it was developed by RCSI, a medical institution, and they are using it to help train nurses and doctors who are coming through university, some of the procedures that are involved in helping people in the who have come in and require help. So a lot of this training can be applied across every sort of industry. If you think about first aid, if you think about safety environments, or administering safety or administering help to a colleague, you can actually recreate certain dangerous environments in virtual reality and practice going through that in a virtual space. Be Fearless is an interesting application. It utilizes the 360 video, so you can see in the backdrop. There that you are positioned at the top of a building, at a penthouse, and looking over the edge, you'll actually be able to conquer your fears. So if there's anyone who's afraid of heights, there's actually a series of 360 videos in this application that takes you from basic heights or low-level heights all the way up to your high heights, and then it measures your progress. You'll see that it actually outputs analytics. You can connect this app while you've got your Samsung virtual reality headset on to your Samsung Gear, what are they called? There's the smartphones. So I think it also integrates with the Fitbit, but it actually can measure your heart rate, and over time you can actually track your progress. You'll also see an interesting point here is that you can track where the viewer is looking, and this app will actually track how much gazing, or track how much of your viewing has actually been looking down or downwards from the heights rather than looking up and away from the height. And I wanted to finish just quickly on some of the things that we've developed to give you an idea of what we've done. Bupa Insurance, we've done some training applications for them using 360 video. We help their staff to be able to understand how and perceive the experience from the customer's point of view. So they're using that for building empathy, but also what's called exposure therapy. So placing their customers or placing their staff in a situation that can be quite confronting helps that staff member to become more exposed and I guess more used to the feeling with dealing with high stress situations. So Bupa Insurance is using 360 video for that. Queensland Urban Utilities has used VR for heritage experiences, so we worked with them on the Colo Waterworks pump station, recreating that based off of the black and white photos. We actually created the Colo Waterworks pump station in 3D, and allows you to actually go back in time and turn the pumps on and actually see it in its former glory. And we're now looking at training simulations for urban utilities as well. Endeavour Foundation is using virtuality quite a lot. They've got a series of VR experiences that help people with disabilities. So we're helping them to become more independent as a disabled person. Simulations such as how to catch public transport in Toowoomba, everything from that to how to serve a virtual coffee as a barista, and how to cross the road safely to an ATM and withdraw money. So all of these experiences for Endeavour Foundation have been based on real world locations. So we will actually go to a physical space and take a bunch of photos and then convert that into a digital environment. Koa Aged Care is using 360 video for people with dementia just to help them to activate their mind and keep them thinking and keep them active. it is limiting, because when you get to a point where you're an elderly person, your physical motion is limited. But with the 360 videos that they've got, they're actually allowing aged people or elderly people to be able to escape their room that they sit in every day to visit locations that hopefully trigger their memories and hopefully keep their mind active. Hyundai. So we worked with Hyundai to create the i30 VR experience. So the i30 is a model or a series of car that they are releasing. Their latest model that was released last year, we actually created a 360 and virtual reality experience for that one, which allowed the user to sit in as a passenger inside of the Hyundai car and travel down the streets of Sydney, while being guided by one of the Hyundai staff as to what the latest features of the car are. The whole idea or the premise for this was that instead of having to convince your mums and dads to go to a car yard and taking the kids, can be a bit of a tedious process. But if Hyundai can create a 360 experience or a virtual reality experience of the car accurately, and then have that showcased in your shopping malls, you'll notice that a lot of cars are actually activating shopping malls now by having a demo car there on site. But with the virtual reality headset, the car brand can actually demonstrate all of their cars without having to get mum and dad to, take the afternoon off. So you can have mum and dad sit down while they're going to grab the groceries from Coles. They can actually have a quick sit down and experience specific cars and go for a test drive through virtual reality. So this was the Heritage ATM experience that we worked on. Just a couple of images here to give you an idea. So this was based on the Heritage ATM in Toowoomba, and the virtual reality experience that was with that allowed Endeavour to train people with disabilities. This is a snapshot of the virtual reality Hyundai experience. So it's based on a futuristic world where you can actually enter into virtual reality and learn more about some of the features of the car. And over here, there's actually a red button. When you push that red button, you actually are immersed into this 360 video where you're sitting down as a passenger and taken on a drive down the streets of Sydney. We did a Westfield Experience, so this is an activation for kids. It's a multiplayer experience, so kids were actually able to have a safe snow fight in virtual reality by versing each other and shooting snowballs at each other, and then the highest score would win a prize. So that was a fun activation that we did for Westfield. Advanced Queensland, we did a video around Hot Desk. So Hot Desk is all about encouraging international businesses to come to Queensland, but Hot Desk also inspires and encourages local innovation. So this video was actually shot around multiple locations from the Gold Coast all the way through Brisbane and Sunshine Coast of local entrepreneurs who were building businesses. So this was more for, I guess, a marketing campaign. Red Eye was one of those businesses, so we actually created a 360 video for them as well. They're based in Brisbane, and here you can actually see an overlay of their product while we're actually capturing the staff using that product in real time as well. This was a short experience that we developed, and it's still much of a prototyping phase, but we were going to use this as a educational application to help kids learn anatomy, interactive anatomy. And that's it for today. I hope that that was useful and helped to entertain you all, but also educate you in terms of what you could be doing and how this technology is being used in different industries. I'm happy to answer any questions as well. If Leanne would like to, or she's already shared the slides, if you'd like to email me, I'm happy to discuss your ideas any further, or give you some ideas of direction on how you could use this sort of technology in your space. So thank you so much, Leanne. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Lex. Look, I know nothing. I knew nothing about virtual reality until today, and I knew a little bit about augmented reality. So for me, you've provided a very clear outline of what the possibilities are, and I found it very helpful that you wove some opportunities and possibilities all throughout your presentation, as well as providing the case studies. We do have some questions. Here's a really quick one.
Okay.
What does IPD stand for?
IPD stands for interpupillary distance. So everybody has a slightly different IPD, and it's literally the distance between, hopefully you can see through the camera, it's the distance between your eyes. So some people are quite wide, but also others like myself are actually closer in together. So something like the Google Cardboard, why I don't recommend it is because the lenses have been locked into place. And everybody who tries it, you know, myself, I might have a decent experience, but others who might have a wider frame face will actually receive quite a lot of eye strain because those lenses can't be adjusted accordingly to their IPD. So something to look for in your Virtuality headsets is the ability to have custom IPD or adjust the IPD for the user.
Thank you. Jared is asking if you'd like to comment on Google Dream View.
Google, probably Daydream. I think he might mean the Google Daydream. I think it is, I think it's okay. The field of view, so we discussed field of view earlier between the Microsoft HoloLens and the Meta Augmented Reality headset. Field of view is literally how much of your view is encapsulated with the digital experience. So the Google Daydream, from my experience, has been very much smaller and enclosed. So the user, or even myself, I felt like I was looking through tight binoculars, whereas the Samsung Gear VR, so you're using the Samsung phone, it's increased and your field of view is much wider, and you feel a lot more immersed into your virtual world. I think that the Google Daydream and also the Samsung Gear VR are really going to be replaced by these standalone VR headsets, which don't require a mobile phone, and they're at a price point where it's affordable to buy multiples, or just buy the headset, buy the all-in-one standalone VR headset on its own. So that way you're not having to buy another phone to have your mobile virtuality experience. If you are, for example, loyal to Apple, or you've got a Samsung but you want the Pixel phone, it's kind of it just has been quite a pain to have to explain the differences and to understand what the client can be able to do with it. And there's a lot of oversaturation, to be frank, in the virtuality hardware space, and the standalone headsets is definitely where the future is going to be.
Well, that leads into a question from Tracy. She's trying to find a quality standalone headset for a research project, and she's wondering if you know where to purchase the Oculus Go, because the MIVR appears to be for China only. So where can she get her hands on a good quality standalone headset?
If you can email me, I would love to include you in some of our other orders. So we have got clients who want to purchase the headsets. There hasn't been any further information on announcing when those headsets will be available. So if you email me, I'd love to include you in our order, and I'll approach the Facebook representative for Asia Pacific. I'm still trying to nail her down. She's very busy, but yeah, I think she's going to be the best in terms of getting a lead into that space. Otherwise, yeah, we're just going to have to wait in line with everyone else, unfortunately.
And Mike is asking, what sort of price points do these solutions now start at for retail businesses?
Okay, so it totally depends on what you're trying to develop. If you were to produce a basic 360 video, you could get it down to maybe $5,000. Maybe a bit cheaper. If you want to create a full virtual interactive experience and you want to 3D scan, women's shoes and allow for the user to put on a headset, be able to pick up these women's shoes, but then customize the color in real time, and then output that into your cart and then order that and have that shipped to their house. The more complicated it gets, basically the more expensive it gets. I've worked on projects that have only been about $5,000. I've worked on projects that have reached up to 6 figures. So it totally depends on, it's like how long is a piece of string. If you're wanting to get some ideas from me, or if you have some ideas on what you want developed, I'm happy to try and give you some ballpark figures that you could work within.
That's very generous of you, Lex. Look, we're out of time. I just wanted, for those of you who are still on the line, we're just going to run one last poll and just get your feel. So after tuning into this webinar, do you think you'll consider adding VR or AR into your business? So if you wouldn't mind just answering one last poll before you head off. Okay, so we've got close to most of the people have voted on this. So, people still voting. So let me see. Okay, I might just close that off for now and let's see. Okay, so it looks like, Lex, we still have some uncertainty about whether or not people are ready to introduce AR or VR into their business. But the 47% of people saying yes, I think is a very interesting sign, because that means nobody has said no.
That's great. And look, if there's any questions that anyone wants to ask, I'm happy. Anytime I can help out. And if you're local to Brisbane, I'm happy to organise for a demonstration as well, especially to those of you who have never tried Virtuality before. I'd love to give you a demonstration. I think it's really important to try the technology first before you can really comprehend what the possibilities are. So thank you so much, Leanne, and thank you so much for everyone else for your time today.
Well, thank you, Lex. And just a reminder to everybody before we exit from the webinar to download the handouts that were there, if you haven't done that already. And we do have some good webinars coming up in April, one on sports tech, and Lex mentioned that there are applications for VR and AR in the sports tech and fitness tech sector at the moment. And also, if you're planning to travel down to Brisbane to be a part of Myriad, then we've got a webinar coming up that is that's going to help you get the most out of your Myriad excursion. So make sure you sign up for those webinars coming up in April. And we're planning for robotics in May, just trying to lock down that speaker there for that. So plus we also have continually events that are happening with Innovate Queensland to help you understand what you can do to accelerate the commercialisation of your ideas or integrate into innovation better in your existing business. Thanks very much, everybody, for taking part today, and we'll see you online next time. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.